Hi, I'm Rachel Norris, and this is my capstone presentation. So to begin, I'd like to Hi, I'm Rachel Norris, and this is my capstone presentation. I'd like to start with an overview of my presentation and what it entails. So we're going to start with the project purpose, and then we're going to move on to the major steps that I took to complete the project. Then we're going to look at the relevant coursework that I used throughout the course of the project. And then we're going to take a look at the future of the project and how it's going to impact my career, and then we're going to finish with a summary of the project. So for the project purpose, it is really an application project to culminate my communications education and training. It is the project itself was 2 manuals, a trainer's manual and a participant's manual for a leadership and communication program. And the premise of the program and the project itself was to create a program for youth to teach them how to be effective leaders. And then it also addresses the needs of Generation Z, who is known to have a communications deficiency, and that was the overall purpose of the project itself. And so the major steps that I took to complete the project were my project proposal, the research, manual content, website creation, and editing and peer review. So for the proposal itself, it really was that opportunity when I was getting started to really take all of these ideas that I had in my mind and to put them down into a concrete proposal for something that I would like to do. And so I took my training with equines and what I do as an equine trainer and then also as a teacher and combining it with my communications education so far and trying to come up with an idea that would put the two of them together in a way that I thought was relevant and effective. And that is how I came up with my project. And then I conducted research. So for my research, I specifically looked at the communication needs of Generation Z, and then I also looked at the use of equines as an effective way to increase skills and abilities in communication. And so under the needs of Generation Z, I found a lot of interesting information that really highlighted why they tend to have a communication deficiency, and one of those reasons was because they're considered digital natives. They are around technology all the time, they use technology all the time, and they have grown up with technology basically their entire lives, and that really does have an effect on their interpersonal skills. And so that gave me a direction to focus on for the rest of my research. And so for the use of equines as an effective method for increasing abilities and skills, I actually found some very recent research that specifically looked at adolescents and how learning a communication skill and then practicing it with horses was proven to increase those abilities over a period of just 8 weeks. And so from personal experience, I've seen it because I am an equine trainer and I mentor and teach all the time. I've seen how those things happen, but it was very affirming to find research that was backing up and supporting the project I was trying to create in the exact way that I want to create it. And so I also found research in that terms of just describing how equines really close the verbal gap and how they force humans to really focus on and be aware of their own communication habits and patterns in a way that allows us to make positive changes, because first comes awareness and then comes change. And so my research was very fruitful, and I really felt like it helped me understand what I was looking for and what I needed to focus on as I moved forward with the project. And then in terms of the manual content, that's when I sat down and I really thought about what would I want to include when I was teaching someone who isn't familiar with the communications field. Where would I start? What was necessary to include? What would be important versus what's kind of interesting, because there are a lot of interesting topics out there, but what would be most important to know right away. And so narrowing it down to the topics that I thought were most relevant and most useful for someone who's just starting to learn about communications. And so weeding down the content was a difficult process because I have taken so many communications classes and I highly endorse all of them, but trying to have the wisdom and discernment to figure out which ones would be most important. And so then I took a lot of my notes and my textbooks and my experience in communications that I've had over the last 3 years at UNG, and I put them together into the lessons that I put into the manuals. And so that was the process of really creating the manuals themselves as I weeded down the content and decided what should go and what should not. And then the next step was the website creation. And so I have some background in website creation. And so for this particular program that I'm looking at implementing, I created a website that I felt like captured the vision and the desire of this program to really give youth a program that would not only teach them about communication and leadership, but would give them the tools to do it effectively and to learn it well. And so I did that as part of my project because I felt like it really tied the whole thing together and helps take it one step closer to becoming a real program. And so then moving on to my relevant coursework. So for relevant coursework, I included this short list here, which is not all of the coursework that I used and all the classes that I've taken, but it were the ones that really stood out for this project specifically. And so obviously, since I made a training manual, training methods in communication was a really important class that really prepared me to make the manuals and then understanding what's the best way to teach people, and especially younger people. And so making sure I kept the lessons to around 20 minutes apiece so that they weren't an overwhelming amount of content, but it was still a full picture of the different concepts that we will be covering in the manual. And then also, obviously, it's a leadership program, so leadership communication was another really important class that I took that gave me lots and lots of good information about what sorts of things that I should focus on teaching if I'm trying to develop leaders. And so I also use small group communication because I do consider leadership to be, in most capacities, in a small group of some sort. And then even if it's not a small group for all people, the kinds of leadership I would be asking of the people who participate would be more of a small group type of leadership to begin with. And it's a good starting point. And then I also do consider the working with horses to be a kind of small group, even though they're not human. It does have the different members and the leader and the follower dynamics that you would find in a small group. And then interpersonal communication, just focusing on those one-on-one communication skills and your effectiveness in a conversation overall, and knowing that that is a huge part of being a leader. And then organizational communication was also one that I utilized on several occasions just because it provides that information for how to handle different settings and how to do it professionally. And when you look at leadership, you often think of a professional setting, even if it's a very relaxed professional setting, it's very much that organizational feel, and it gives a lot of good information on how to handle those things. And so then lastly, obviously because we're working with equines who are completely nonverbal in their forms of communication, nonverbal communication was a very big part of what I focus on with the manuals and then just equine training in general, because equines, of course, are 100% nonverbal, but humans are quite a bit nonverbal as well, depending on who you talk to. And just focusing and honing in on those areas of human communication that people tend to overlook. And so that was my relevant coursework. And so then the future of the project really revolves around getting the manuals copyrighted and published, and then hopefully I'll be implementing the program soon. It was planned to implement the next school year, but that may be delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and so that will be okay. We'll work through it. It'll give me time to get more support for what I'm trying to start. And then I also want to expand my opportunities with this kind of as my platform and as my foundation to look into ways that I could do seminars or work retreats or anything like that I could also use this sort of idea for groups other than youth as well, and just to create awareness in general of the need to focus on one's own communication skills to be effective in your relationships, in your workplace, and just in life in general. And so, to summarize my project, I went over the purpose of the project and who it's going to affect and why it was created. I worked through the process I took to create the project itself, and then I gave you the finished product of what it will hopefully be once it's finally implemented. And that is my capstone presentation. Thank you.